could also be dangerous. And we are, as teachers, whatever age we're teaching, we're in some kind of a guardian role for our students. Is that right? Do I mean guardian? I mean, we have some moral responsibility to our students to not, throw things at them that are going to over distress them and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, we're not restricted in the same way as we are with kind of prepared materials and things like that. Our online world, the one we're all taking part in now, is alive. And of course, the other thing is that we can be incredibly varied. We don't have the restrictions that a past teaching experience had, it seems to me. And what about the way we teach online? Is that different? Has that changed at all? Yes, I saw something flashed up on my screen there, talking about teachers as facilitators. By the way, we've always talked about teachers as facilitators in the classroom, but online the facilitation is both much easier but also much more complex. Something else just flashed up on the screen about being relevant to the student's culture. I completely agree. And if you're basically saying, if that comment is basically saying we have to be mindful of the culture we teach in and the students we're teaching, so as not to gratuitously offend or upset the students we teach, I'm completely in agreement with that. I don't think we should allow that to stifle different sets of opinions, because otherwise we lose our curiosity. But that's why I use the word specifically, being mindful of that. What about the way we teach? Well, here we are. Here are some words which I don't think I've really used before when talking about teaching and methodology and so on and so forth. I think especially online teachers have to be motivators. I saw someone mention that word before. And if you're any good as a teacher, that's what you do. Have to be motivators. We have to be problem solvers. At the beginning of lockdown, when people first went online, it was just problems all the time. Teacher, how do I do this? Muted, you're muted, unmute yourself. How do I do it? How do I share? What do I do? And we had spent our time solving problems. And it became obvious about solving problems. We're an incentive providers. We have to give them things to make them want to do things. Goals, small goals, big goals. We're enablers, helping them to make it work, and so on and so forth. We're a knowledge resource. We know about stuff, and as we get more experienced and more involved online, as people did, we became a resource to help people to do things. And above all, and this comes back to the, I've just seen a comment which said students contributed more to our lessons. I do hope we have a chance to discuss that. And above all, teachers, remember the word curiosity, need to be searchers. Very, very quickly, let's start talking concretely. I've got about 5 minutes, and I'll go through this as quickly as I can. I love the word counsellors. Someone's just put counsellors. When I was doing a talk for BCT, or BC stands for British Columbia in Canada, I had a Zoom. You can see this is a still photograph. I had a Zoom with a good friend of mine called Bita Rezai, who works in Vancouver now. And I was asking her how teaching online, and in her case training online, had affected, how it had changed her. And she said, well, now when she teaches online, she spends a lot of time with her students, orientating them in how it was going to work online. They spent a whole day online, just getting everyone used to being online and managing the online world. And in that way, they built up the community. Remember, I said earlier that we want students to be part of our online community. And that's both more difficult and sometimes easier online than it is in a real classroom. And she wanted the students to be familiar with everything that was going on. And that's all about classroom management. But the big thing for her was reaching out to individuals, and the way you could do it, the way you could do it online through all these different modes of communication. I spoke to this guy who's a good friend of mine. He's called Josh Lynch, and he's a musician, and he is a cello teacher. That's the second time I've mentioned cello. I don't know why not. I say we're friends. We play together. There we are, playing together at a festival the other day, and I won't go into detail about that. Anyway, I asked him how his teaching had changed online, because I teach languages like you do. But he teaches music, and he had to teach online during lockdown as well. And he said when he came back to teaching face-to-face, he realized his teaching had changed. He wanted to remove himself from the equation, not be the focus of attention. So in the old days, he used to take his cello, and if the student had a problem, he would play. And he discovered that the students would just go, "Ooh, ah, you sound wonderful, teacher," but it didn't help them solve a problem. He needed to take himself out of it and put all the focus on the students. He says the great thing he ever got them to do is to teach him what the problem was, to explain to him what the problem was. But the thing he said, which really was amazing, Josh is about 32 years old, which is a great age, by the way, but he doesn't have a whole decades of experience behind him. But he came to this conclusion. In a lesson, when a student plays, I listen to the person, not the music. And I find that to be a sort of clue to everything we're talking about. Listen to the person, not the music. Or rather, we're interested in the person and the music. Let me give you some concrete examples of what I'm talking about. Here's a text. This is a sort of social sciences text, and it's about a very famous experience. You don't have to read it. Please don't try and read it. It'll drive you crazy. It's a very famous experiment, the marshmallow test. Do you know about the marshmallow test? It's where they gave kids marshmallows, little children marshmallow. They'd sit them in the room and they say, "Here's a marshmallow. If you can wait, if you don't eat it and wait for a minute, I'll bring you another one, and then you'll have two." And the experiment was whether the students were able to wait or not, whether these 4-year-old kids were able to wait. Anyway, there's a text about it, and then a follow-up experiment from a different university. What do you do with a text like that? Well, the first thing we need to do, and this is, online has brought this into absolute focus. And by the way, it's taken me a long time to be curious enough to realize that this is a really big issue. The first thing we have to do is give them a chance to respond personally. Remember, we talked about deep processing, cognitive and emotional engagement. Well, the emotional engagement has to be personal. Do you like it? What do you think about this? Are you in agreement? What confuses you about this? That's what matters, so that the emphasis is on the student and not on the teacher. By the way, I think, Paul, I've got a message from you, and I will finish in about another minute or so if I can.
Okay, thank you, Geremy.
Is that okay?
It's fine, yeah, just a couple of minutes, it's great.
Okay, cool, that's perfect. But another personal response, and here's something to think about. Another personal response is to say, look, here's the text. It's got lots of lovely phrases and words in it. Why don't you decide which of those words and phrases you want to, just choose 3 of these words or phrases that you would like to put in your suitcase and take home with you? This is a personal choice of yours, not the syllabus choice, not the teacher's choice, not the class's choice. This is your personal choice. That's a personal response. Lots of other personal response. What would you like to ask Walter Mischel, the man who led these experiments? What would you like to ask him? What would you like to ask the kids? All of that is very personal. What about personal choice? With personal choice, I'd like to ask students what they want to do with the text. Would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? All of this is about the student. Remember, how do we make them feel? What do we ask them to do? And how do we teach? Well, I think we make them feel included and important and at the center of everything. I listen to the person, not the music, said my friend Josh. We get students to search personally. And then, of course, we can do lots of other things. Oh, by the way, absolutely crucially, we give students time to think before we demand their responses. We give them a chance to think and say, why do you think that? Just for 30 seconds, why don't you prepare your answer? What is it that, et cetera, et cetera. And we can get students to reconstruct this information, which is one of the best ways of learning in all sorts of different ways. For example, we can have, yes, Tahira, paraphrasing the text works fine for me, but let's make it everything that we discussed about how we make students feel, how we teach, what they do, and so on and so forth. Let's say to them, would you like to do a little YouTube video in which you explain the marshmallow test and what you've learned from it? Would you like to role play an interview with these people? Would you like to find out if there are ways that you can get what are the main points of this for you? What have you learned from this? And all of those personal responses, choices, and searches come into that form of reconstruction.
1 minute, Geremy.
I'm done, as it happens. I just want to say at this point, I've raised a whole lot of issues in this talk. We've shot all over the place. But everything I've been talking about has been about the fact that whether we like it or not, we make choices all the time. And now, because of the whole online experience, we've had to make choices that we were, some of us, I include myself, unprepared for. And boy, it's been both a terrifying experience, but invigorating and exciting. It's also, there are lots of other things to say about it. It's not a good working environment for teachers being online the whole day. And, you know, do you have time to go to the loo? When do you have a chance to make coffee and all that kind of stuff? But it's forced us to be curious. It's forced us out of our comfort zones. It's forced us, if you like, to be slightly out of our depth. And that's when you do things that are exciting. And that's the end of my talk. And I think, Paul, if it's okay with you, I'll unshare my screen. Is that right? And then we can talk about anything that anyone wants to talk about. How does that sound?
Yeah, you can do, Geremy. That's fine. I've got quite a few questions to put to you, so I hope you're ready.
I am ready. I'm trying to unshare my screen. How do I do that?
Yeah,
can you unshare it for me?
Yeah, maybe somebody can do that. I don't think it's massively important. We can see you. I think Sarah might come in and help us as well.
Okay. Anyway, I've finished my talk now. Paul,
yeah, all right. I will help you with that sharing. No problem.
Thank you, Sarah. So, Geremy, where do I start? It was wonderful. So many comments in the chat box, just saying basically just let Geremy continue talking forever. But we have to ask you some questions. So thank you for that. It was massively informative. Nobody believes that you do any ironing for a start. And thanks for the David Bowie reference. It made my day, a hero of mine. Question, first of all, coming from, I think it was from YouTube, actually, from maybe from Feroz, who asked, Dr. Harmer, is curiosity a cognitive process or is it an innate trait? And how to ignite curiosity among students who are less interested in what's going on?
I think those, by the way, those are really good questions. What is curiosity? Well, I think it's something that we can develop in young people by the way we behave and the model we give and what we ask them to do. But it's also something. It's something that we can do for ourselves by interrogating our own comfort zones and saying, you know, how happy are we to be here forever? What else is there? Where's the search, and so on and so forth. And so I think for us, it's a process for teachers of by the way, I would suggest that most of the people here are pretty curious, otherwise they wouldn't have come along to this talk to see what it was all about. That's part of curiosity. But it involves going to talks, reading, discussing with other teachers, constantly being in this kind of, not turmoil exactly, but so on and so forth. What was the second half of the question?
Second half of the question was, how do you ignite students' curiosity when they're not really motivated with what's happening?
I think that's a really good issue, especially online. We've discovered how difficult it is to ignite that curiosity in some people. I think the point about teaching online, which can then translate into face-to-face teaching, is the sort of the many ways in which you can challenge students, ask them to do this, get them to do this little task, mini task there, send them off to look at that. You've got the whole range of the world. If Paul, if you're not a curious person, you are. But if you weren't, I couldn't make you be curious. But I could just offer you all the time kind of temptations and provocations and hints and everything to try and get you going, to try and light the spark. And by the way, in case I know I'm not saying anything terribly original or radical, because teachers have always tried to do that with students in front of you. And there's a student there who just looks uncurious, and how on earth do you get them to do it? It's one of the really difficult things about teaching. What do? We go on and on and on and on, trying to find the spark, trying to find the switch, looking for it. And of course, online has given us a chance to a much greater variety for that curiosity. And that's the best I can say. It's no great answer. But it is one of the things that we do all our lives as teachers, is just constantly trying to find the spark. I remember my brother, who's a very experienced teacher, especially teaches advanced students, and he was in Spain, and I phoned him and I said, how are you getting on with your Spanish? Because he wasn't a Spanish speaker. He said it's absolutely wonderful. He said, if I want to discover how to ask for something in a restaurant or a cafe, he says, I find out how to say it, and then I say it in the cafe, and then I've learnt it. And I remember on the phone saying, can you listen to yourself? You've just said something so obvious for a teacher. It's ridiculous. But what he was saying is the answer to that question. What he was saying is, if I want it enough, I'll get it. And the job of a teacher is to try and make students want it enough. And it's bloody difficult, excuse the language.
Thank you, Gerry. I think it's a fantastic answer, actually, very well explained. Got another question from Haider. This is coming from YouTube. Are there any guidelines to make online teaching closer to face-to-face teaching, learning? That's a really complicated question, because I need to unpack that. The first question is, do we need to make online teaching more like face-to-face teaching, or do we accept that we're in a different mode, in a different, and say that whilst our beliefs well, that's a whole other issue that I talked about. Whilst the things we wish to achieve may be the same in both cases, the mode, if you like, of the online environment is a different environment. No, that's not true. It's the same environment. My first answer to that, the two parts of that question is that what we need to do in the online environment is work out what it is we can do, which makes it different and takes us in different directions. And then we can do the same
in face-to-face. I think my whole belief about what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years is that when now that we are back partly in face-to-face teaching, what can we? My whole talk was what can we bring back into face-to-face teaching that we learnt online, and I think that's what my talk was really all about. But of course, the beauty of the world we live in now, and gosh, not all of it is beautiful, but that's another matter. The beauty of the world we live in is our ability to sort of mix and match both worlds, both environments, if you like. I'm not sure that's a terribly good answer to the question you were asking. And as usual, I'm talking too much, so I've forgotten what the first part of the question was. I apologize.
No, I think you've answered both parts, actually. I think we've got time just for one more question, Geremy. I wrote this down before. You were talking about how important the curiosity is for teachers. And apart from listening, what would you think are the most effective ways for us to actually show our curiosity as teachers?
Okay, gosh, there are lots of answers to that. Number one, how do we show
maybe your top three
again?
Maybe your top three.
Number one, when students say something, don't the one of the greatest one of the least productive things you can ever say in a classroom is, "Oh, very good, well done." Because that tends to close off the conversation. It closes the door. One of the ways of explaining, of modeling curiosity is when a student says something is to interrogate what they said, to provoke them, to push them forward. Oh, really? What happened? What? In other words, one way of provoking curiosity is to show, is to model curiosity about what students do and what they say, and to not say, and not give the impression, "Oh, I've heard that before. Oh, so you spent the weekend with your family? Oh, well, no. On the contrary, of course, doing it in the right way and a non-intrusive way, saying, "Oh, well, what did you do? And do you always do that at the weekend?" That kind of basic response to students, which pushes the conversation forward and finds out more, is one model of curiosity. The second way of modeling curiosity is to literally say, "Does anyone know?" And to say, "Well, I don't know either. Why don't we together try and find this out, and actually go out on a limb and try and find out more?" And always see if a student can tell you something that you didn't know before. Because we're teachers, everyone who teaches in Qatar University or anywhere else for that matter, we're just us. But in our teacher role, we're often given not authority exactly, but we're given sort of superpowers by our students. This is my teacher, and so that's a sort of natural way, because students revert back to what it was like being kids when the teacher was sort of. But actually, a demonstration that we are. That we are also, we're searching all the time. And so always trying to find a way in which the students and the teacher together can try and find out something new. And the third way, I think, is to get students to ask you about your responses of what's going on, and to show that you're not sure about some things. And a classic way that you're familiar with, Paul, and well, everyone is familiar with, is this, is the whole issue of when students ask you complicated language questions. And some of them are easy to answer, but some of them are not, because language is not that. Language isn't that tidy and easy. It's to say, do you know what? I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to actually. Do you know, that's really interesting. I mean, I've always worried about this. Why? Okay, I tell you what, why don't we all go and have a look for it, and I'll come back in the next lesson and I'll come back with this, and I'll tell you what I've found out, and you tell me what you found out. And all of those three things, and there are many, many more, are sort of demonstrations of the fact that we, teachers don't know everything and students don't know nothing, if you know what I mean. We're sort of all mixed up in this rather wonderful sort of exploratory life and that's what I think we need to model somehow.
Okay, Geremy, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time. I'm sure we could listen for a lot longer. I know I could anyway. So, Geremy, thank you once again from everybody at QU and all the attendees. We really enjoyed it. Thank you for all the attendees for coming as well. I hope you enjoyed Geremy's presentation. It was excellent. Just a quick reminder that digital attendance certificates will be sent out by October the 15th. And please stay with us throughout the day. The conference continues throughout the day. Next sessions begin at 11:30. And as I explained before, go on the conference website, go on the schedule, and you can join the session of your choice. So thanks
just before you go, I just want to say a big thank you to Ocon for inviting me in the first place. A big thank you to Sarah and Mohammed for going through getting all our technology right and stuff like that and making things work. And a massive thank you to you, Paul, for moderating this session. And it's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Geremy. Thanks for your kind words. I'm sure we hope to see you again. So thanks so much. And thank you to everybody for attending. Great session. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. I think I'm going. Bye.
Thank you, Paul. So the next session will be at 11:30.
11:30, yes.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you there.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.